La conversation va être en anglais et la période de questions qui suivra cette conversation va pouvoir être bilingue. Donc, n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions en français. Et s'il y a quelque chose aussi que vous n'avez pas compris ou que vous voulez qu'on insiste, on va se faire un plaisir de le faire aussi en français. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you today for a conversation around Vikky Alexander work, an exhibition we host at the Fonderie Darling. My name is Caroline Andrieux. I'm the founder and artistic director of the Darling Fonderie, and I'm very happy to be also the curator of the show of Vikky. So first of all, a few words about Vikky Alexander. So Vikky completed a BFA at Nova Scotia College of Art in Halifax. In the 80s, then she moved to New York in a very stimulated art scene at this time. She made a lot of meeting and working with great artists. Then in the 90s, she moved back to British Columbia, where she was a teacher at the University of Victoria in Vancouver. Then she moved again to Montreal, and today we are very happy to have her in our city. She has completed very important shows in New York, in the main institution as the New Museum, the Whitney Museum, MoMA, and the Dia Center for the Arts. And very recently, next year, or even this year is finished, she had a great retrospective at the Vancouver Art Gallery. And, he's a great curator and a great author based in Montreal. In 2012, he co-curated with Catherine J. Morris an exhibition 6 years, materializing 6 years at the Brooklyn Museum in New York. In 2014, he curated an exhibition on the reception of the French theory in Bina Hélène Gallery and in Dazibao, d'un discours qui ne serait pas du semblant. Same year, he curated a major exhibition, Passage to Abstraction, of Geneviève Cadieux at Musée d'Art de Joliette. Then in 2016, he organized a conversation with Catherine Malabou in the Musée d'Art des Laurentides à Saint-Jérôme. Please join me to welcome Vincent Bonin. Please, Vincent.
So hi, Caroline. Hi, Vikky. As a starting point to our conversation, that will cover mainly the works that are shown at the Darling Foundry at the moment. I would like to hear you, Vikky, about the process that was behind these sculptures as they were first conceived in the mid-80s. I would like to hear the story behind these sculptures.
Merci, Caroline. Hi, Vincent. Yes, well, I think the sculptures first started, I was on a trip to Europe and we were driving through the French Alps, and we stopped at Chamonix and we took a funicular up to the top of the mountain. And when we came back, we looked at some gift shops, and I found a postcard, a huge postcard of what looked like a room that was carved out of ice. And I looked at the back of the postcard, and it indicated that there, inside the glacier at Chamonix, there was every year a father and son team would go in there and carve out a small domestic environment, like a kitchen and a bedroom and a living room. And you could go and visit that in the winter. So I didn't go because it was summer and it had already melted, but I thought it was such a fascinating idea that you would take something as overwhelming and sublime as a glacier and want to take control of that and domesticate it somehow. And when I got back to New York, I thought, well, how would I make ice sculpture? Like I remembered the Canadian tradition of ice sculpture, Quebec City and Ottawa and Montreal. But that was not going to be something I was going to do because it's sort of more process oriented and the ice melts. So I thought of making glass sculpture. And a friend of mine knew a fabricator in Calgary called Urban Glassworks. And when I talked to the owner about it, he said, oh yeah, I think I could do it. So we made some rough drawings and I made my first series of glass sculpture from 3/8" clear plate glass. And they were first displayed in Calgary at the Stride Gallery, which is a non-commercial gallery, probably in 1988.
So they were conceived around the mid 80s,
Yeah.
or yes.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of an interval between the time where you conceive them and the time when you build them for this exhibition.
I think it was close. It was probably a year. Yeah, not too long. But I think when I first saw it, like I sent him the designs and he made these pieces for me. And when I went to his business to take a look at the sculpture, I thought, oh no, my God, this is hopeless because they're clear glass. So I thought, oh, I have nothing. I looked at them and I went, there's rien. So then I thought I'd better make a platform for these things to be on so that they actually look like something. So I built, it looked more like a display room. So on one side was kind of pale pink, and it was sort of 8 feet by 8 feet, and then an 8 foot by 8 foot wall. And behind that, sort of like a stage set, was turquoise blue. So I put the bed on the turquoise blue and the chairs on the pink, and you could walk around it. So it really looked more like a furniture showroom. But it also had the weird thing that it became more theatrical. And when people came to the opening, they started a discussion about formalism and Clement Greenberg. And I completely forgot that I was so close to Edmonton, where I believe, Clement Greenberg had given talks. And so all these kind of more conservative sculptors were fascinated by that aspect of the work, which was not the way I wanted them to be read exactly.
So they didn't get the irony of the work, like they just went straight to the form.
Yeah, like shadow and overlapping and the lines and the abstraction.
And what did you say to them?
I was so surprised. When you're at your opening, you don't really. There's not much you can say. I was like, really, I had to think about it. So after that, I thought, I should probably put a picture of the postcard every time I show the work so that there's a reference to the two postcards.
When you conceived the sculptures in the mid 80s in New York City, were you responding to a particular discourse?
I think that these sculptures were not responding to a particular discourse. They were definitely just a very strange tangent. I didn't know where they would end up, and I didn't know if they would relate to my other work. But I did do a piece in 1986 called Lake in the Woods, which was an installation. And I showed it at my commercial gallery, which was called Cash Newhouse, but it was a very small, narrow storefront gallery in the East Village. Not very spectacular looking. And like I said, very narrow. And so in response to the space, but also in response to the fact that New York was just full of this sort of bad guy European painting like Kiefer and Immendorf and Docupil. And I was like, I really had it with that. So I thought, I'm going to do something else. So I put a very bucolic 1970s mural doubled along one wall. And then on the other wall, I had store-bought shelves with mirrors. And the mirrors were at the height of your head. So you could see, when you looked in the mirror, you could see yourself reflected in the landscape. And I remember people coming into the gallery and walking straight to the back where there was a gallery office saying, how come you guys don't have a show up this month? So it was like invisible, which I kind of liked. But the glass sculpture, I would say, was not didn't have much to do with that period. It was
So then perhaps I can lead you to the other question about the relationship between these sculptures and a series that you started concurrently, or perhaps a little bit later, at the time where you were showing these sculptures. In the beginning of the 90s. And the first instantiation of this series was the West Edmonton Mall photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So were you linking these two bodies of works at the time?
I don't think so. I can't exactly remember which came first. I know that I went to the West Edmonton Mall because Dinah Agaitis she was then the curator at the Bounce Center. She had curated the Lake in the Woods piece at the Bounce Center. And she said, you have to go and see the West Edmonton Mall because it looks so much like this piece. And I went up there with Chris Cran and I took 35 millimeter photographs. I wasn't quite sure what. Basically, I think I was photographing the natural in the artificial, you know what I mean? Because they had all these, like a fake beach, and they had tropical fish in tanks, and they had wild birds, and, you know, just next to the shop. So they were kind of putting these two strange things together. Like, I thought, how can you incorporate nature with this kind of advertising or make it somehow kind of a marketing display? But that's what they were doing.
The relationship between the two, for me, is in the kind of structural elements that you photographed, you isolated in the West Edmonton Mall, like the mirror columns, the way that you placed your camera also, that was mainly kind of frontal in relationship to the structure of the mall itself, or the structure of the building itself, that was revealed through these mirrored columns. So you have this kind of like this. These images are oversaturated with reflection, but at the same time, you have these elements that are structural within the space. So I was thinking of this relationship between the two bodies of works around this kind of structural aspect that you reveal.
That's true, because with the mall, all the building itself, the interior architecture seems to be floating because they've mirrorized all the support structures. So all the columns and the floors are just all covered with mirrors. So it's like there's no grounding. And it's the same with the glass sculpture too. You're right. It just kind of floats.
But just as a segue, when you did the sculptures, and then you transitioned to the series on these architectural enclosures, you abandoned the human figure. Like, you didn't have any. Well, you had some bodies in the West Edmonton Mall series, but you didn't have you stopped rephotographing these fashion models.
Yeah,
but
well,
still.
They weren't they weren't the subject. The people in the mall were not the subject. So,
but actually, still, there's no images of bodies in these works from that period until today.
Yeah, it's true. Hardly any. Well, now the people in my work are the ones who are looking at it. I learned a lot from doing the retrospective at the Vancouver Art Gallery, because for once I could see all the work together. And when I had been making it, you know, when you're an artist, you just focus on what's in front of you and getting that, but you don't see how they all connect. But with that one, I did, because when I saw the old work from the 80s and the super shiny surface, and how the black mat with the plexiglass or the glass on top of it became a black mirror, I thought, I've been using mirrors since 1982 or something. not that much has changed.
Yes, that's something that for the viewer that was very striking in the show, like the consistency of not your strategies, but the formal questions that you were asking in the works.
Yeah, I know, it's weird.
And the way that we as viewers were always integrated into the works display. But there's this series that you made in 1985,
Between Dreaming and Living. Yeah.
Yes. So that one, in that series, there's a kind of superimposition of human figure and landscape, to the point where in some of these images you see it neither or, like it's the surface is kind of opaque, and I was thinking about this series in particular because it related somehow for me to the sculptures, especially the recent version.
With the with the dichroic, it seems to really relate.
Yes.
That work was the first, it was when I was trying to get away from appropriated photography and incorporate my own images. So I sandwiched two slides, one a figure and one a landscape. And sometimes the landscape is mine and sometimes it's not, but it was just a way to kind of ease out of that kind of formula. And I liked the way that how the images were so slippery and fugitive, which is a lot the way the dichroic sculpture is. It's just like when you walk around it, you kind of first you think, wait a minute, this is a mirrored and it's this color. And then you go to the other side and you're like, no, it's transparent and it's that other color. So they're quite similar.
And especially because the viewer is reflected.
Yes.
Your face. So it's something also.
Yeah, and the architecture is reflected too.
Yeah, the viewer somehow becomes a bit like the figure in the photograph. Like we have this kind of distance, but at the same time, this melancholic relationship to our own image. Like being lost in this kind of abyss, of the sculpture. So there's something. Yeah, I think it's very striking how
green of color.
They relate. Yeah, the color.
Yeah.
I would like to hear you talk about the relationship between reprinting these images, that a process that you started, I would say perhaps like 10 years ago, more or less.
Yeah, reprinting maybe 6 or something, but yeah, not so much.
Or showing these works, reprinting and showing these works.
Yeah, you're right.
And then remaking these sculptures with added features. Like the photographs are the same. These sculptures that you showed at the Darling Foundry are new works, but referring to another series. But I would like to hear you talk about this kind of this reemergence of the works from the past into the present.
Well, I think it's two separate stories because the photographs are being reprinted because there seems to be some new interest in that kind of work and in feminism and the Me Too thing, and it's just a period that's being looked at again, the 1980s. And I think people are interested in looking at the photograph, because now they seem more like, to me, I'm not very much of a technician. So when I first took the images, I was just using a copy camera, a 35 millimeter camera, and some lenses to cut the glare, the end. And then I would send them to the printer. So crop it, in camera and then send it out. There was no retouching done sort of either at the printers or where I am. Now you can retouch the heck out of it. So I kind of like that there are flaws, but it always amazes me when like young women are looking at the photographs of Christy Brinkley, who was probably 21 at the time, and they're going, oh, she's kind of fat, or because everything's been retouched up and you can see her tiny wrinkles because the sun is shining right on her, and there hasn't been any retouching. So I think that's pretty amazing. Everybody has to look more beautiful than beautiful now. So it's a very strange thing. And then redoing some, like revisiting glass was really in response to the Darling itself. When Caroline and June asked if I would do a show in that big room, I was going, oh my God, you must be kidding. There's no way I can do that. And I thought, I went in there and I had talked to Vincent a little bit, and he goes, Vikky, whatever you do, don't try to fill it. It's impossible. And so when I went in there, I was like, yeah, Vincent's right. Like, don't compete with the architecture because it's so amazing. Just do something that's gonna make them both look like amazing. And so I thought, well, I'd always wanted to show the clear glass sculpture in something like a farmhouse ruin in Ireland or something completely romantic, because I thought, oh, it would be like a ghost sculpture in a ghost of a building. And so I thought, well, maybe I could use that for the Darling. And when I talked to Jacques about it, he said, yeah, have you ever thought of dichroic glass? And we looked at images, and I remember seeing this piece of Olafur Eliasson where he had clad the whole Harpa building in Reykjavik with this dichroic glass that shifted color. And I thought, yeah, this would be so cool. It would be like real jewels at the floor of the beautiful Darling. Like I said, it wasn't really thinking about remaking for a direct purpose, but it was more like a site-specific piece.
Yeah, because the experience of these sculptures in the Darling Foundry is very different from the experience of the series as it was shown at the Vancouver Art Gallery during your retrospective. Mm-hmm. So there you had also this series of photographs that you did in Las Vegas. These like the sculptures were in the middle of the space, and around them you had these images of the tiger reclining tigers. On this. So in Las Vegas with these kind of guardrails or that were made according to the same technique, axonometric drawings and like very simple design. So this room really felt like the sculptures were hollow. They had a presence, but they didn't use reflection or mirrored surfaces like they were. So for me, very different experience to see them there and then see this version at the Darling. And
the Darling is pretty amazing also because the light changes in that space. And when the light changes, like Caroline and I decided to light it quite softly because you can pump up the volume on the lighting of those so they really look like I don't know, 1978 or something.
Very theatrical.
Boogie Nights or something, right? But we didn't want to do that. But nevertheless, I've been in there. I'm sure Caroline has, at different times of day, the sculptures. Sometimes they look softer or more transparent, and sometimes they really look hard, don't they? And the color really shifts a lot.
Yeah, they are alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they bounce back because they're kind of feedback devices also, because like suddenly the light has a materiality when it hits those surfaces. Also very, very interesting that the light, which is perhaps like seamless, that we perceive as being like part and parcel of the space, it's less abstract when it hits the objects. At one point I was asking you about the phenomenology of your work, that you wanted your work to be invisible. So I thought that was very interesting, and I was wondering, when you use the word invisible, you think more about like perception that we kind of have after the fact of something that we were not seeing or seeing partially.
I think one analogy I like is, when you watch figure skaters and you just see that it's just like a perfect performance. You never see the hours of practice that goes for it and the number of times they fall down and all that other stuff. So I like work that looks like that, like it's just crystallized, like it just got there. And so for me, that means that I don't want to see evidence of my hand necessarily there, which also brings me into it's about the viewer. Like I want the viewer to have a moment of either self-realization or self-awareness when they see the work, as opposed to thinking about, well, what's Vikky thinking about? So that's the part I like. And of course, mirrors do that directly. Like that's just what they do. And photographs do it a little bit, I suppose. Not as much, but it's all about the surface. I don't know if that answers your question.
But in relationship also to issues around decor, you know, like the decorative, you know,
right?
That's where like the term invisibility could echo or ring in, because like decor is something that is mainly visible for someone who finds that it is an eyesore, you know, it's something that disrupts their perception of a space. But for someone that decided to, you know, like put, for instance, mirror columns in their living room, you know, or on the wall, like it's kind of like it's seamless also, you know. So like there's kind of issues of taste around this as well.
No, it's true, because I do use everyday materials, you know, like stuff that I find.
But dichroic is a kind of really precious material.
It is.
It's a very different kind of material than when you use.
It's true. It is. I think it was used more scientifically, I think, that material. Although it is used in decor as well, like for shower stalls and stuff, but it's not cheap, as you know.
And it's manipulated. It's not natural. It's totally manipulated.
That's right. Like there are 2 layers of color film between 3 layers of glass that get sandwiched.
Well, there's something about this particular material that is new for most of us, because well, for many, we see that for the first time, you know, that close. You know, first we saw it, we had a glimpse of it on the surface of a building, but in this case, it's very, very strange because it's also very new.
The real experience of it while face to face.
So the following question is for Caroline. So could you talk about your own experience of the space of the Darling Foundry as you witnessed the changes in the neighborhood, but also as you invited artists to use it through the years, so since the 1990s. And then the relationship between this history of the building as you witnessed it and Vikky's show, well, and you know, in the chronology of the exhibitions that responded to the space, is kind of bookending it somehow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things for me echoing to the space with Vikky's work. First of all, I recall my experience of seeing the show you organized, Vincent, at l'Escalier.
With John Knowles and Lorna Bauer.
Right, sorry.
To mention.
Sorry, yes, my friends. So it was very impressive for me to arrive there and to see this big wallpaper covering one wall, putting us in an apartment where we were in a kind of condominium with the view of the exterior. So I immediately thought about all these condominium all around the foundries, starting to rate. And I was interested in the experience that was brought there. Then after we spoke together and after we made the visit with Vikky, I was very interested in the scale, also the way the image were rescaled, because I think the space here, the one thing which is very important is the scale of the building, the scale of the exhibition room. and like the work of Vikky was echoing to this kind of scaling. So this is the second layer. Then after there was this idea of texture. I was very also interested in the contrast between the idea of texture in the building, like the building is very, we keep all the tracks of human labor, let's say. So I was totally interested in putting Vikky's show because of these three reasons. During my work at the Foundry, I invited several artists who were addressing this kind of phenomenologic experience in the space, like Aude Moreau with Le Tapis de Sucre, where it was just a layer of sugar on the floor, or Kareli Fluglen, who hang 150 just fil, how you say fil?
Yes, threads, yeah.
Threads of nylon in the space were catching the light also, like was very interesting and very minimal, some very minimal gesture. Also Lani Maestro, who just put some rounds of water, black water, in the middle of the space, were reflecting also the ceiling. So I'm during my 20 years of curating, or 18 years of curating in the Darling, I'm always interested in this response to the space and how we can have an experience, a real experience as a viewer, a unique experience. So yeah, that was my main reason to invite Vikky. And I'm very happy because she addressed all these concerns in terms of, I think, the new condominium. In a way, the furniture she put there was a kind of response of this extreme designed kind of interior kind of thing. It's so extremely designed that it's not functional. So I like it very much also this way. I was thinking also, I forgot to mention this exhibition of, the first exhibition in the space was Claude Lévesque. I know that Vincent, you've seen it. And this clash with the preciosity and the disco ball and all this thing in this space, which is so layered with hard labor. I think it's make us think about how the human condition, the human working condition, move today to more manipulation. Like you said, Vikky, you said you don't want to see your hands on the work. Like, you know, it's just some piece of glass just put together, or some image crop on the internet, on magazine, just rescaled. So also this contrast I was very interested in. Yeah, so also this idea of trompe-l'œil, the piège, the trap also, the decoy. That's also something that was interesting me in terms of how we can inhabit the space, you know, in terms of just really simple kind of work that just can attract you, attract your gaze, and being like strong enough to just make you feel in the space with this work.
It's the Darling and L'Escalier I had the same feeling for both spaces, that I had to address the space itself. And with L'Escalier is Lorna and John and Vincent's project, curatorial project, but the fact is it's Vincent's apartment. And so I was very interested in the private versus public space, because I think Vincent as a writer is obviously a very private person. And yet he let me do something in his house, and he let people come into his nice apartment and have them and talk to them about my work, which I thought was very interesting. And I just wanted to do something like, I think that was at the late 70s, Vincent and Caroline, c'était une exposition de, I think it was Jan Hout who did Les Chambres d'Amis. It was collectors in Belgium, I think, letting artists do a project within their houses. And I always thought that would be such an amazing, I was like, if that, I would love to have been in that show. But when I talked to L'Escalier and I looked at Vincent's house, I want something that addresses the fact that his very private space is now very public. So it's turned into a showroom kind of space.
Yeah, it's like the displacement of an industrial space and an exhibition space.
Exactly.
The interior, the intimity, or the labor, or confronting to the work.
And also the views, like the views that you see in the big murals at the Darling. You could say it's like the view in the condo that you buy. It's always temporal. It's not necessarily going to stay that way. You know, if you buy on the 14th floor, trust me, somebody over here is going to build to the 16th. And, you know, it's like...
Yeah, that's what happened in front of my house, actually. A condo were built just in front of my house after 20 years of a superb view on a very nice field, you know, like now I have a condo. Yeah.
You know, well, it's you know, the space that is kind of ingested by these projects. Like the space is like the space of the city disappears when these projects appear, and the way that they're conceived is so generic, you know. But what we have as a viewpoint, like as a a pedestrian, is mainly their surface. But the piece that you show in L'Escalier was an image of a bedroom from
model suite.
Model suite.
Yeah.
Yes, that you photographed in 1997, and then you printed the images a bit later in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But that particular these images were of like the early instantiation of the condominium.
It was the beginning of the condo boom in Vancouver, for sure. And it was like an early ground level showroom that one of Bob Rennie's developments. And Bob was a collector in Vancouver. And I asked him if I could photograph in his showroom. I didn't know what I was going to get, but I thought, well, it just could be interesting. I'll try it. And so he said, yeah, no problem. So I went in there, and I loved that all the views, because it's a ground floor box, but all the views look like you're on the 35th floor or the 40th floor.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Yes,
it's very cool. And then also that they have scaled. It's a very small place, but they had to scale down the furniture also to fit into it, so it looked like it was a bigger apartment. So in one of the photographs, it's only a series of 4 photographs, and the one that was up at L'Escalier was the bedroom piece, but there's one photograph of the living room, and there's a dining room table with a bowl of oranges, and the oranges look like they're grapefruit. They're so huge because they've cut down the table, and they cut down the chairs to make it look like it's 1,000 square feet when it's really only 800 or something.
Yeah, there's this idea also of the size of these apartments, because they are very small now, the apartment with a very low ceiling, and the foundry, which is super too much big, like, you know, so
huge.
This idea also, I like this confrontation, like when I've seen the show at L'Escalier, to figure out how it's more selling the outside than the inside.
It is, yeah, that's right.
The view and how you could be taller and impose yourself on a city in a way. You know?
But like just like the murals at the Darling, which look unfocused when they're photographed. You know, when you have a certain distance from the surface, the image in my living room was very grainy. You know, so when you looked at it up very close, it became like basically particles of light floating,
it's like here, like the one here.
Yeah.
Very
So
pixelized, like
It breaks
yeah,
down.
it look abstract almost.
yeah. So that's a very it's a part of the work, to have this kind of overall view on something, and then you have this kind of mental image of it. And then when you go close, the image falls apart somehow,
Like it's a ghost. It's like a dream trying to dream for selling, let's say.
So I think this is a very strong aspect of your work, because our sense of having an experience of an artwork is somehow related to a good distance, where we can grasp the meaning of the work and forget about the form, have a direct access to the meaning, to the content. But your work really includes us as viewer and makes our experience much more complex. There's all these layers that have to do with ideology, with history, but also there's this other layer that has to do with our own bodies.
To take a tangent, I was thinking about the big murals, and we were talking about scale. And this is something I didn't realize. Even work I did in the 80s, they're all great selfie opportunities. Like the lake in the woods, it's like everybody's taking pictures of themselves in that. And the big darling ones, it's like, you're right, when you get up front, it's very grainy. But if your friend takes your photo, it's like, oh, now I'm in my dream apartment, which is a lot like being, as Judith Barry wrote about, a casual shopper. So you walk by the vitrine of a handbag shop and you stop because you see yourself reflected on the handbag that you want, and you kind of visualize it in your hand somehow. Like, is this too big? Is this too small? Is this the right color? So it's like the two you get fused onto this luxury object, right? Going,
It's like the one behind me too. Like this is a very recent one you made just for the darling. Thank you so much, Vikky.
That's right. That's
for our fundraising
benefit piece, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like Millie was saying mirage. How you say mirage?
Yeah, it's a mirage, la même chose.
Mirage, yes.
Yeah.
It remind me like an oasis, an oasis.
An oasis, yeah. So it's like
where the swimming pool and the sea is merging.
They come together.
But these collages are very close to your own experiences of the images, when you find them, when you put them together, like they're not like, they have this kind of crude aspect, that shows collage. It's so far from like virtual reality as we can experience it nowadays, like with like this idea of being immersed, like your work is kind of doing that, but also like showing how it's made, like
I like that kind of like I said, I like the evidence of how it's put together. Everything could be more perfect, like, the beautify aspect, but basically it's like, oh, I didn't have enough blue there, so I cut this other piece off and I stuck it there. So I didn't spend, 10 hours in Photoshop trying to fix it. It's just not the way. I'm not interested in that. So
yeah, well, it's interesting that what you bring in with this, also with the selfie, because this is again like a kind of afterlife of your work.
Who knew? Exactly.
Yeah, it's
so
something that you were envisioning when you were doing these thinking about these works, like in the 80s and
not
90s.
in 86, man. No, that's right. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So funny.
So you always photograph even when you take a picture from the magazine. It's not a scan, it's a photo.
No, behind you, that's not rephotographed. That's just collage. It's just cut out of the magazine.
Collage,
directly.
but then scan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's glued to collate, and then Jacques scans it.
Okay, okay.
That's more to get the size, and because the glue that I use is not very permanent, so they need to have that.
But usually you photograph.
Yeah, my photographs are my
magazine.
photographs, yeah, but the collages are from different materials, yeah.
Vikky, how do you see the future of these works? Like, what's the next step with this series?
Well, the next step is going to be I'm doing a solo show in New York at Downs and Ross, and I'm going to be exhibiting 3 of these pieces. The Caisse de Dépôt also bought one, so they were probably put it on display as well. And then another one of them is going to FIAC in Paris, if there is an art fair, in October.
Thank you so much, Vikky, for your amazing exhibition at Fonderie Darling. We're very, very proud to show this amazing work. It's going to be on until August 29, a Saturday, because we are closed on Sundays for the COVID summer and maybe the fall. And Vincent, thank you very much for this conversation, which helped always to go deeper in the work. It's always a pleasure to have you as an author and a curator with us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So I think it's time to open the question now for the public. I hope there's going to be a lot. Comme j'ai mentionné, vous êtes bienvenus de poser vos questions en français. Ça va nous faire plaisir d'y répondre en français, puis de traduire les questions pour Vikky en anglais au besoin.
Merci. Merci Caroline. Merci Vincent.
Merci à vous.
Thank you.